All right, guys. So I wanted to do something a little bit different today, which is I know most of you are just interested in being better communicators of ideas, but some of you want to become professional communicators of ideas. And so I wanted to share with you sort of how I'm thinking about that and then what I'm going to be doing to aid people in that going forward. So, one of the things that I strongly believe is that you really only need two ingredients to have a really successful career as a person communicating ideas. So one of them is you need ability. And that's really the core of what I've been working on, right? Is how do we develop the communication and persuasion skills so that we have the ability to be very valuable in providing clarity of ideas to our audiences. But then the second thing you need is you need an audience. Whether you're working for somebody else or whether you're working for yourself, the key thing that's going to enable you to build a career is having an audience, having people who are really passionate about what you're doing. And there's definitely stuff I know about that, but this is not an area where I'm an expert. In fact, it's an area where I'm actively working right now to build my audience for what I'm doing. One of the things I've learned from this brilliant business and marketing guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, whom many of you probably know of, is that you can be very valuable not just giving advice, but documenting your journey. And so what I want to be doing is documenting my journey of trying to build an audience for my ideas on persuasive communication. And we're starting from a pretty low level. I mean, I basically went away and just have been helping Alex Epstein grow his business for 3 years. And so I'll give you some of the numbers in a little bit, but I'm not starting from zero, but pretty close to zero in terms of how many people are actively following my work on my various platforms. And so it'll be an interesting journey to see how can we grow that. Now, what is the goal in terms of growth? Now, on one level, I have pretty ambitious goals, which is I want people who advocate good ideas, I want them to be super important in the debate. So we're talking, I want a lot of people who are following my work and benefiting from it. But if we're just thinking at the level of being able to build a career, right, and having that as a goal, then I actually have pretty modest goals. So there's a famous essay called 1,000 True Fans by Kevin Kelly. And these are the people who are going to follow everything you do, buy everything you do, talk about everything you do, share everything you do. And his point is, if you have 1,000 true fans, you've got a career. Because, even like if you just run the numbers, $10 a month from your 1,000 true fans, bam, you're pretty solid. And so the goal should be achievable. For virtually anything you want to do, the goal should be achievable, but it's like, how do you get started and where do you get started? And a core way I think about it is that there's certain kinds of ingredients. So a major part of the ingredient is going to be, what's your platform? How are you communicating with your audience? Where are they supposed to see you and follow you? And, for me, I have a couple elements to that. So there's my podcast, there's my YouTube channel, and those two kind of overlap. And then there's the essays that I write on my website. Now, a core piece of a platform is you want a platform that cannot be taken away from you, particularly if you are trying to communicate controversial ideas. I mean, today, one of the things we're seeing is that, if you're on Twitter or you're on YouTube and that's where your whole audience is, and you say something that's politically unpopular, you can lose everything overnight. And so what you want is, you want a platform that you control. And the best platform to have is an email list. And so one of my goals is I'm trying to bring everybody to my email list. And then there's kind of, all right, well, how do you grow those things? And I'm going to be talking about some of the experiments I'm running. But right now, it's really at the experimental stage. It's just putting out content. And then finally, you're going to think, well, how do I monetize this if I'm really trying to have a sustainable business, right? You actually need to be able to, my arm's getting tired, so I am somehow trying to manage switching. Okay, so if you're, trying to build an audience, you have to figure out a way to actually monetize it, a way to pay the bills. And, there's a lot of the models that I've studied historically have been focused on what you could think of as like a handful of people paying for high price items, right? So it's you create a course and you sell it for $3,000. And then, if you do the math on that, you only have to have a few super fans and you're golden. But for me, that is not a good fit for what I want to achieve. You guys are learning about my video creation abilities right now, such as they are. The problem with what I want to achieve is I'm trying to solve the problem of how do you scale the liberty movement? How do you scale effective advocates of good ideas? And one of the major barriers is that many of the people who want to engage in this pursuit don't have a lot of money. And so a core commitment of mine is that I want to make as much of my content free as possible. My courses, my essays, my newsletter, almost everything I create, my group masterminds, I want all that to be free so that there is the most scalability in terms of learning persuasion. So the problem then becomes, all right, well, what's the scalable model? And what I've really settled on right now, and we'll see how it plays out, is I have a few major clients that I do kind of done for you and done with you consulting type work, where I'm actually helping them create content or creating content for them. And that's sort of the main source of paying the bills, let's say. But it's very time intensive and it's not very scalable. Then the other kind of approach is having speaking, which is we're in the middle of a pandemic right now, so that's not exactly the most remunerative active field at the moment. And then there's one-on-one work with clients, which is one of the few places that I actively charge high money for. Then finally, what you can think of as a Patreon model, although again, I don't use Patreon because that's something that can be taken away if you're advocating controversial ideas. But it's basically people who support your work voluntarily choosing to fund it. And so right now, just to give you a sense of where I'm at, and part of the goal here is just to be really transparent, is, let's see, so the newsletter right now has, I think, 267 subscribers last time I checked, so very small, lots of work to do to grow that. The kind of consulting work is, I have about 3 major clients, and that's the foundation. Right now, I think that's bringing in something like 10 grand a month, but my goal is to get to 20. And so what do we have then left over for one-on-one clients and Patreon? So one-on-one, I think, is somewhere around $550 a month, with just 2 and possibly 3 clients. And then we have the Patreon model, and that's really the one that I'm interested in scaling because that gives me the most freedom and flexibility. And right now, I think that's at just over $100 a month. So you can see, like, I'm not starting that much further than most of you, except for let's call it a few of these big consulting clients. But in terms of, we're just thinking about, somebody who has an audience or is trying to grow an audience, the really core thing that's that's having to go, like, the core act of building from virtually scratch, that's where I am right now. And right now I don't have a great strategy. Right now what I have is just a mode of experimenting. And so if I think about some of the mindsets that I think you should have when you're trying to build your audience, and again, we're assuming that you've kind of reached a level of ability where you can really create value with your ideas. If you're thinking about growing an audience, my view is, like, create as much value for them for free as possible. And, on whatever channels you're using, social media, essays, podcasting, YouTube, books, whatever it is, just get as much value out there as possible, and then have patience. So, like, there's no timeline that I have in mind. So if I say like, look, my goal is to reach 20,000 a month and have it mostly by these, $10 a month Patreon type subscribers, like there's no deadline on that. There's just, okay, create value, experiment with ways to convey that to people and ways to encourage them to support it, and then just keep going. And that's sort of where I am, and I think it's where a lot of you are going to start, right? It's just, you should be out there right now creating content, experimenting with different platforms, seeing what works for you. But what I'm going to do, and the reason I shared the specific metrics of where I am, is so that, we can track this together and see how it's going and see what we can discover in terms of strategies and tactics that will actually help you build your audience. So that's where we are. That's where we're starting from. And it'll be kind of exciting, I think, to see where this goes. Talk soon.